You thought it was gone for good. But heaven was never out of control. This wasn't a robbery. It was a reclamation. Something you thought was taken from you was actually rescued. You didn't lose it. God pulled it. Because what you were about to settle for was smaller than what was written. Not every loss is punishment. Some losses are prophecies in disguise. The removal wasn't rejection. It was refinement. You prayed for alignment. And God answered by separating you from what was secretly sabotaging your future. Yes, even the thing you loved. Even the thing you cried for at night. But what if I told you it never left your orbit? It was just hidden, rerouted, reconstructed behind the veil. If you saw the blueprint of heaven, you'd weep at the precision. God didn't just take it to test you. He took it to transform it. What's coming back is not the same thing that left. It's been reborn in fire. You mourned a broken version. But what's returning has no cracks. What you once had was contaminated by fear, doubt, ego. But what's returning has been baptized in purpose. Sometimes the delay isn't because you're not worthy. It's because the gift was too fragile for your old mindset. God had to stretch you before he restored it. If he gave it back too soon, you would have repeated the same mistake, lived the same trauma, doubted the same voice. So he let you feel the silence, to birth discernment, to separate your emotions from your segment. You thought it was over, but heaven saw it as a beginning. This wasn't a loss. This was a rehearsal for reclamation. And while you were grieving in the natural, the supernatural realm was taking notes. Every tear cataloged, every prayer archived, every sigh. You thought no one heard. God recorded it because it was part of the strategy. Nothing was random. Nothing was forgotten. Nothing was truly stolen. You see, in the kingdom, what belongs to you can't be hijacked, only refined, only delayed for protection. The enemy saw you weeping and thought he won, but he didn't know. God had quarantined your blessing to purify it. What's coming back to you isn't a return. It's a resurrection, a new thing, sama root, different fruit. And it may not even look like what you lost. Because heaven doesn't make copies. Heaven makes miracles. You're waiting for the old version to come knocking. But what's on the way is unrecognizable. Because it's been touched by glory. This isn't compensation. It's a divine upgrade. What you once begged for will now beg to serve your mission. You didn't just lose something. You outgrew it. And now, it's being reshaped to match your rising. This time, it will fit. This time, it will last. This time, it will serve the destiny God designed for you before you were born. Get ready, because something you lost is coming back. But it's not just coming back, it's coming back better. You thought you were forgotten, but really, you were on heaven's operating table. Still, silent, sacred. This wasn't punishment. It was surgery. Not every delay is a denial. Some delays are divine incisions, cutting out what your eyes couldn't see. You prayed for restoration, but restoration without purification is poison in disguise. So God slowed it down, not to torment you, but to detox what you didn't know was killing your spirit. You wanted the door to open, but what if there was mold behind that smile? Rot behind that opportunity? Venom in that relationship you kept calling soul-tied? You were asking for it back. But God was scanning it for contamination. He saw what your emotions couldn't. He heard the prayers you never spoke, the ones your soul groaned in silence. That person, that position, that place, it looked shiny, but it was soaked in manipulation, comparison, addiction, and counterfeit peace. It had the form of good, but not the fruit of God. So he removed it, quietly, surgically. And when you cried, why? Heaven whispered, I'm saving you. This is why the wait has been so long. This is why you keep seeing others get what you prayed for. They're not ahead of you. Some of them are running toward their own destruction. While you were arrested by grace, let that sink in. You weren't left behind. You were laid down, so the healer could go in deep. And deep work requires deep stillness. No flinching, no panits, no pushing the process. Because just like a surgeon won't operate on a moving body, God won't complete divine surgery in a spirit full of anxiety. He had to sedate your striving, mute your logic, calm your defense mechanisms, so he could cut out what was never meant to live inside your next season. Some delays are anesthesia, so you don't feel the pain of what's being removed. That sudden disconnection, that door that slammed shut without explanation, that silence that broke your heart, it wasn't sabotage, it was salvation. What if God protected you from touching what was spiritually radioactive? What if he loved you too much to let you reconnect with something that still had spiritual parasites? You saw potential. He saw infection. And because you're chosen, he will never send you into your future with soul fragments that still bleed. That's why the delay felt brutal. Because he was not just fixing it, he was fixing you. You were asking for the blessing. He was prepping you to receive it without breaking. Because if he gave it to you while your identity was still bleeding, you would have used the blessing to prove your worth, instead of serving your destiny. So he waited. Not because you weren't ready to love, but because you weren't ready to be loved without betrayal. Not because you couldn't handle success, but because success without healing becomes addiction in disguise. Heaven doesn't recycle what's still contaminated. It rebuilds from scratch. That's why the new thing doesn't look familiar. That's why the restoration feels strange. This isn't the old thing repackaged. It's the revelation reborn. It's not patched up. It's purified. The thing you cried for is coming back without the strings, without the lies, without the hooks of soul bondage. It's coming back sanctified, stripped of all that once defiled it, anointed for your future, cleansed for your mission. So don't confuse the weight with abandonment. It was intentional. It was strategic. It was heaven's surgical silence. And when this surgery is done, what returns to you will no longer be fragile, no longer corrupted, no longer a source of suffering. It will be glory-wrapped, strength-sealed, destiny-proofed. You're not just getting it back. You're getting it back, unbreakable. You called it loss, but heaven called it liberation. Because what you were holding on to was never meant to hold you. God saw you shrinking, bending your brilliance just to fit in. You called it comfort. He called it a warning. That relationship you mourned, it only loved your old level. It couldn't breathe at your next one. And God won't let you dim just to be desired. You asked why it was taken. But here's the truth, most won't say out loud. You were living beneath your destiny. And love will not allow you to stay trapped in a chapter you were born to outgrow. Sometimes God removes what's good enough to protect what's glorious. That job, that city, that connection, you prayed to preserve it, but God's vision was too big for that container. You're not being punished. You're being positioned. This is not rejection. This is redirection. Because you're no longer who you were when you first received it. And what used to fit you now confines you. Let it fall. Let it break. Let it leave. This is not a breakdown. This is a breakout. The Spirit whispered, "Clear the space. What's coming won't fit in what's safe." You see, there's a spiritual economy, and room must be made. You can't receive greater while clutching the familiar. You can't step into destiny while dragging old debris behind you. God won't bless what keeps you bound, even if it once felt like a blessing, because what blessed you in Egypt can't carry you into the promised land. Manna doesn't fall in Canaan. Some blessings expire. Some seasons close. And when they do, don't resurrect what heaven buried. The hands you once needed may now be holding you back. The places you once wept over can't hold your new anointing. When God removes, he's not being cruel. He's being calculated. He's not just giving you back what you lost. He's giving it back in kingdom measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. But not until the lesser thing leaves your hands. Because if you cling to almost right, you will miss what was divinely designed. God is not into counterfeits. He's into covenant. And covenant requires capacity, stretching, sacrifice, surrender. So if it left, it had to. If it broke, it was too small. If it hurt, it was healing disguised as pain. This was heaven's mercy, refusing to let you build a life on a foundation too fragile for your fire. You weren't abandoned. You were upgraded. And soon, you'll look back and say, "Thank God I lost it. Because if I had kept it, I never would have become this." They thought God was quiet because you were wrong. But the silence wasn't punishment. It was a prophetic shield. You weren't being ignored. You were being insulated. There was something fake standing too close to you. Something that smelled like a blessing, talked like a promise, smiled like support. But underneath, it was an imposter sent to drink from your overflow. That's why heaven didn't move right away. Because there was a counterfeit at the gates, disguised as destiny. If God had answered too soon, that thing, that person, that opportunity would have crept in and poisoned the new wine. You would have shared your increase with someone secretly feeding off your light, and called it love, and called it alignment, and wondered later why your spirit felt emptier with more. This is your warning. Delay is not rejection. It's detection. God wasn't late. He was exposing the room, watching who only claps when you're weak, who lingers when you're low, who plans to rise when you do, but not in the spirit. You've been asking for overflow, but God can't pour new oil into a leaky vessel. He had to check the room for cracks in loyalty, leeches in covenant, actors wearing robes of trust, because if he filled your cup in that moment, the counterfeits would have taken your portion, sipped your joy, mimicked your vision, and you would have thanked the wrong ones. That's why some doors closed without explanation. That's why some people disappeared without conflict. Because heaven saw what you didn't. Heaven heard what was said behind your back, in rooms you never entered. Your blessing was paused, to prevent a bleeding, to stop you from feeding wolves in sheep's clothing, to spare you from giving sacred things to unsanctified hands. He had to frustrate your plans, so the counterfeit would walk away. Because when there's nothing left to take, the opportunist always leaves. That weight you hated, it flushed out every fake friend, every glory thief, every false connection sent to hijack your spiritual inheritance. You're not being punished. You're being preserved. God doesn't bless chaotic altars. He blesses clean spaces, sanctified soil, and hearts that can discern the difference between divine delay and demonic detour. If you would have gotten it too soon, you would have called a mimic your miracle. You would have invited the enemy to your table and handed him your knife and fork. But now, you've been through the drought. You've learned to crave truth over timing. You've stopped begging for movement and started waiting with authority. And because of that, heaven is opening something that no wolf can access, no manipulator can touch, no counterfeit can copy. What's about to come isn't just provision. It's protection. It's assignment matched. It's vibration specific. It's soul aligned. And it's just for you. Because now, your hands are clean. Your circle is cleared. Your ears are tuned. Your discernment is sharpened. And your altar is holy. Now, when the blessing comes, it won't be shared with a shadow. It will shine on the real ones. The silent warriors. The loyal hearts. The ones who stayed when there was nothing left to take. And this time, you won't wonder if it's from God. You'll know, because it'll come wrapped in peace, covered in purpose, and sealed with the signature of heaven. And just like that, what you called a breakup, heaven called a breakthrough. You weren't abandoned. You were extracted. It wasn't rejection. It was a divine escape route, cut clean through the battlefield of your emotions. You called it heartbreak. But in the spirit realm, it was a rescue mission. Because not every love is holy. Not every presence is a gift. Not every connection is covert. Some were distractions, dressed like devotion. Some were delays. With a smile, God didn't remove them to punish you. He removed them to preserve you. Because while your heart was whispering, maybe, your spirit was screaming, run. You asked for clarity. God sent separation. Because the closer you get to destiny, the tighter the gate becomes. And not everyone is cleared for access. You kept calling them the one. But God saw the cracks in their covenant, the hidden pride, the unspoken jealousy, the spirit of confusion lurking behind the chemistry. And the Lord said, I won't allow my anointing to be entangled in this. So he severed it, quietly, brutally, mercifully, and you mistook it for loss. But it was a divine upgrade in disguise, because some connections dilute your oil, some soul ties leak your power, and some lovers hold your hand while pulling you off the mountain. You needed more than love. You needed alignment. They weren't evil, but they were unequipped. They couldn't carry the weight of your next level. And God, in His mercy, wouldn't let you build a temple. on a foundation mixed with spiritual confusion. Because every time you tried to climb, they pulled you back to a version of you God already buried. That wasn't love. That was emotional idolatry. You weren't crying for them. You were crying for the comfort of the familiar. You missed the rhythm, not the purpose. But God is jealous over your calling. He won't let comfort keep you in a counterfeit covenant. Because the enemy's strategy was never to attack your gift. It was to attach you to the wrong person, who would drain the gift silently. They didn't curse you. They distracted you. And in heaven's courtroom, that was enough. God doesn't bless divided attention. And if they had stayed, you would have spent years watering something that could never bear fruit. So he cut it off. Not to leave you lonely, but to give you back to yourself. You didn't lose love. You lost a loop of self-betrayal, of emotional dependence, of praying for someone who never prayed for you. And now, the anointing can breathe again. Now, your vision isn't fogged by fantasies. Now, you can finally hear God without interference. Some doors didn't close. They were sealed by heaven's fire. Because your next mission requires uncontaminated focus. And while you were asking why it hurt, God was already pouring living water over the places they couldn't reach. This wasn't a punishment. It was preparation. You didn't lose them. You gained your wings. And heaven has never been more ready to carry you higher. You didn't just fall apart. You were strategically dismantled, not to break you, but to rebuild you without the poison. Because not every heartbreak is a tragedy. Some are divine strategies. Heaven saw what you couldn't. It saw the hidden rot beneath the romance, the counterfeit comfort, the dependency dressed up as love. God let it all collapse, not to punish you, but to rescue you from a version of love that would have drained your calling. He didn't let you hit rock bottom to humiliate you. He let you touch the ground so he could dig up the lies planted deep in your roots. Because what's coming next can't rest on toxic soil. You thought you lost them, but what you really lost was the illusion. You didn't lose love. You lost the need to beg for it. You lost the addiction to needing someone to validate your worth. And that, chosen one, is not loss. That's freedom. The ache you feel? That's your heart detoxing, detaching from a dependence that kept you looping back into cycles of half-truths and half-healing. God is not interested in surface healing. He doesn't bandage bullet wounds. He operates. He goes to the root. That's why he let you bleed a little longer, so he could remove every thorn that kept reopening the same emotional wound. You had to break deep, because your healing had to be final. No more spiritual relapses. No more returning to what once wrecked you. And when love returns, it won't carry a knife in its smile. It won't demand your silence to keep the peace. It won't shrink you so it can shine. God doesn't recycle trauma. He resurrects truth. Sometimes it's the right soul, wrong time. But if it was truly from God, he doesn't discard it, he redeems it. He rebuilds. He refines. He renews. And when the time is divine, he reconnects what he once separated. Not in dysfunction, but in wholeness. That's why you had to be reset before you could be rejoined. Because this time, love will serve the mission. It won't distract you from it. You were never abandoned. You were being realigned. Heaven was reconfiguring your soul to receive a love that doesn't own you. It releases you. Before you could love another, you had to fall in love with God again. Not just emotionally, but spiritually, eternally. This heartbreak sent you back to your roots, to the place where the only voice that mattered was his. And now, your foundation is holy. You used to love to survive. Now, you will love to serve. To bliss, to co-create with heaven. And when it comes back, if it truly belongs to you, it won't come back with confusion. It will come back with permission from heaven. No more guessing. No more aching. No more manipulation hidden in affection. Because you are no longer a void to be filled. You are a vessel being used. This time, it won't hurt. This time, it won't leave you questioning your worth. This time, it won't dilute your anointing just to stay. This time, love will look like peace. It will feel like purpose. It will flow with prophetic timing. Because this time, it was sent by God, not summoned by fear, not manifested through desperation. It will come not to complete you, but to partner with the fire already burning inside you. And when it returns, you'll know, because it won't pull you away from God. It'll bring you closer. Chosen one. What you thought you lost is coming back, but this time, it's coming with oil, with purpose, with heaven's signature, and it will never hurt you again. You didn't disappear. You were drafted into a divine silence, a silence not of surrender, but of strategy. Heaven pressed pause on your visibility, to rewrite the script in secret, not to erase you, but to reintroduce you. Stronger, sharper, sovereign. The hush was holy. The quiet was queenly. And in that quiet, God pulled out the pen of redemption. You thought the silence meant you were forgotten, but it was the stage reset before the next act of glory. The silence wasn't punishment. It was prophecy being proofed behind the curtain. Those who mistook your pause for paralysis, they don't know. Heaven was muting the noise to amplify your true voice. The mic wasn't stolen. It was reserved for such a time as this, because when you speak again, your words will cut dimensions. They'll shift atmospheres. They'll carry the fragrance of a soul that's been with God. You weren't voiceless. You were being trained in timing. God was refining your tongue, so your words won't just echo. They'll activate. You were not silenced. You were calibrated to speak with precision, to war with wisdom, to strike with words that don't miss, because chosen voice don't ramble. They release revelation, and revelation requires restraint. You could have spoken. You had plenty to say, but God said wait. Wait until you're not reacting from the wound, but responding from the throne, because when the mature soul is silent, it's not weakness, it's a weapon. Heaven trains warriors in stillness. Heaven teaches kings in the cave. Heaven anoints prophets in the shadows, not with applause, but with fire. You weren't hiding. You were being honed, not forgotten, just forged. That stillness? It was the dressing room for destiny, where you adjusted your armor, sharpened your sword, learned the discipline of divine restraint. And while your silence confused your enemies, angels knew. They saw your jaw clenched in intercession. They watched your fists uncurl in surrender. You didn't fight back, not because you couldn't, but because you were busy ascending. They thought you lost, but you were rising inwardly. And inward elevation always precedes public glory. Not every battle is worth your roar. Some require your absence, to expose the noise of the unworthy. You were never called to play chess with shadows. You were summoned for crowns, not crumbs. They mocked your silence, but they don't know it was a trap. A divine trap for those who clap too early, laugh too loud, underestimate too quickly. Because while they danced over your supposed defeat, you were gathering momentum, taking a step back, to launch like an arrow. They didn't see it coming. They never do, because chosen ones don't return for validation. They return with vindication. And when you reappear, it won't be for explanation. It'll be for exaltation. You won't have to prove anything. Your presence will say it all. Your silence was never empty. It was pregnant with glory. And now, it's time to deliver. You thought you'd receive it the way you lost it. But heaven doesn't return things in the same condition. This isn't a refund. This is a reinforcement. What you cried for, what you begged God to restore, what you feared would never return, is coming back with upgraded power. It carries a new frequency, a new assignment, a new intelligence. Before, it came empty-handed. This time, it brings resources. This time, it carries keys. Spiritual, emotional, strategic. You loved the first version, but that version couldn't go where God was taking you. So he let it be, buried it in mystery, only to raise it in glory. God doesn't resurrect unless there's a mission. And this time, the mission is bigger than your comfort. It's about kingdom collaboration. You are not who you were. And what's returning is not what you lost. It's been restructured, repurposed, and redefined to match the weight of your awakening. The old you would have idolized it, clung to it, made it your identity. But the new you, the one forged in the fire of loneliness, the one anointed in secret battles, the one covered while others forgot you, that version of you can carry it with wisdom. This time, it's not coming back to complete you. It's coming to CO labor with you. It's not a crutch. It's a covenant weapon. The first time, It filled a void. This time, it fills a strategic role. You used to hold it for comfort. Now, you wield it for war, because God does not return anything that cannot stand the pressure of the battlefield you're entering. And make no mistake, you are entering territory that requires reinforced blessings. No more fragile gifts, no more shallow returns, only heaven-hardened reinforcements. You are not in need of affection. You are in need of alignment. And what's returning is encoded with assignments. It carries instructions. It speaks a heavenly dialect your old heart wouldn't have understood. Before, you would have misread it, settled for its surface, clung to its shadow. But now, you see the blueprint. You recognize the seal. You discern the divine strategy. This is no longer about getting back what was lost. This is about fulfilling what was delayed. Because what you lost in weakness, God is returning in strength. You used to desire it just to feel whole. Now you're whole without it. And that's why it's safe to return. It's not your source. It's your soldier. It's not your healer. It's your hammer. It's not your answer. It's your Ailey. And this time, you won't need it to survive. You've proven you can live without it. You've proven your oil doesn't come from external things. But when it returns, it won't be a piece you were missing. It'll be a partner in your purpose, not just a blessing. A burden-sharing weapon fit for the divine war you were born for. You don't need it to breathe. You need it to build. This is no longer about mending your heart. This is about multiplying your reach. No more placeholders. No more pacifiers. Only prophetic alleys. This is the return of something holy. Not for your comfort, but for your crowning. So when it returns, you won't bow to it. You'll rise with it. Because the version that's returning doesn't just belong in your life. It belongs in your legacy. You had to lose it in the visible realm, so heaven could reclaim it in the eternal one. What you couldn't hold on to in your hands, you now carry in your spirit. And that is a transfer more powerful than gold. You thought it slipped through your fingers, but it was actually ascending, removed from the dust of man, planted in a realm where rust can't touch it, where demons can't trace it, where no system, no scheme, no spell can access what's now been sealed. You didn't just lose a thing. You lost a version, so that God could return it in its final form. This isn't just recovery. This is divine transfer. From earthbound custody to heaven's full ownership. Because what you're about to receive isn't tied to people anymore. Isn't tied to that job, that title, that broken system. It's free. And it's yours. It no longer moves through their contracts. It no longer bows to their calendars. It no longer answers to manipulation. The reason God let it fall apart was because it was still dripping with attachments, tainted by trauma, tied up in cords you couldn't even see, words spoken in anger, vows made in fear, hands that once held it, but didn't have the purity to steward it. So God said, let it fall, so he could gather the pieces, burn the residue, and form something new, without the hidden contamination. You lost it in the natural. To own it in the supernatural, you held it with emotion. But now, you hold it with authority. It's no longer a possession. It's a covenant. And a covenant can't be stolen. It can only be fulfilled. When you let it go, it passed through the fire. Now it's returning, with the signature of God written on it. No longer fragile, no longer negotiable, no longer dependent on the favor of man. This is yours because God said so, because destiny requires it, because heaven promised it. And hear me clearly, God will not allow you to receive it again, while still depending on the world to protect it. He is your source now. No more middlemen, no more gatekeepers, no more begging for permission. What's coming next doesn't need approval. It's ordained. It won't return through a back door. It will arrive through a supernatural revealing. And when it does, it won't come with shame. It won't come with apology. It will come with power, because it has been anointed in absence. You've been trained in the dark. Now comes the reward in the light. What once left your life will return, marked by fire, marked by purpose, marked by the sovereign hand of the Most High. The version you clung to would have broken you. The version he's returning will build you, strengthen you, and fulfill the call on your name. So don't mourn the visible. Don't grieve what had to die. Because what's coming back isn't just restoration, it's resurrection. And this time, no man can stop it. No demon can block it. No memory can distort it. Because this time, it belongs to you, and it bears the stamp of eternity. You won't believe it at first, because what's coming back doesn't even look like what you lost. It's too big, too bright, too heavenly to resemble the thing you wept over. You cried for the old form, but God was fashioning a glorified version in secret. You thought it was gone, but it was just being rewritten in glory. This isn't a return. This is a rebirth. He didn't send you a duplicate. He sent a heaven-forged evolution. The old version couldn't carry what's ahead. The old version cracked under pressure. But this one was tested in fire, refined in silence, released in perfect timing. The last time it entered your life, it came to test your heart. This time, it comes to fulfill your assignment. You're not the same vessel anymore. You're not that desperate soul trying to hold on. You've grown. You've been crushed, pressed, shaped. Now your hands are steady enough to hold the holy. Now your spirit is deep enough to carry the covenant. What's coming back is not a recycled comfort. It's a divine appointment, a destiny-coded revival of what was once broken. God didn't just restore what you lost. He restructured it, built it back in silence while you thought you were forgotten. But heaven does not forget its blueprints. You mourned a grave, but God was building a throne. And now you'll witness the return not of what once was, but of what heaven always intended. This thing, it doesn't serve your pain anymore. It serves your mission. It doesn't match your past. It matches your prophecy. It's not here to soothe your emotions. It's here to activate your calling. You'll stand in front of it and say, Lord, is this the same thing I wept over? And heaven will say, Number, this is the thing I was always planning to send you, but I had to let the old version die first. It used to be a relationship, a job, a dream, but now, it's a testimony. No one will recognize it, not even you. And yet, your spirit will know, because its frequency will match your awakened DNA. It will shine with glory, not because of what it is, but because of who you've become. Others will say, How did you ever lose something this powerful? And you'll answer, I didn't lose it. I was being prepared for it. You'll see the same thing you once touched in ashes, now wrapped in the light of restoration. And this time, your hands won't tremble, because this time, you'll hold it as a king holds a scepter, as a priest guards the altar, as a chosen one receives their inheritance. What once felt like grief now returns as glory. What once left you empty now arrives full, overflowing, undeniable. And here's the hidden truth. You don't even need it anymore. And that's why you're finally ready to keep it. Because when you don't chase it, it comes home. When you don't idolize it, it aligns. When you don't break beneath it, it bows to your destiny. This isn't about what you lost. It's about who you became in the waiting. And who you are now is the reason it had to be made new. You'll look into its face and see your own reflection, not of who you were, but of who you were always meant to be. And this time, there will be no sorrow, only the soft tears of peace, the quiet breath of fulfillment, and the silent knowing that this is no longer what you lost. This is what God has made, perfect, chosen one. Something you lost is coming back better.